Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. Today's guest is Lucy Brand. She is an energy alchemist, galactic shaman, divine channeler, and founder of Energetic Essence Healing. Today, we will be continuing our discussion on the metaphysical world. Lucy, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me again. I think I had so much fun the first time. I'm glad to be invited back.
We actually did have a very good time talking about the metaphysical world in the first episode, and I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss anything. So for those who may not have heard the first episode, the first installment, what is your understanding of metaphysics and otherwise the metaphysical world?
Yes, my interpretation or understanding of it is it's how the universe comes together, but in a way that we can't quite figure out. So everything from universe, dimensions, different realms, us as beings, other beings, but also, you know how love, there's no mathematical equation for love. There is just a magic in love. There's no rhyme or reason or strategy to it. And that's what I think metaphysics is about the universe. It's more of a feeling of how everything comes together rather than statistics like science.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned there is no equation or algorithm for love. But when you talk about love, I don't think that it's the fuzzy love that we associate with relationships. It's more of a higher love that kind of binds us all together.
Yeah, if I'm talking about the source of all that is, or the divine, or some people call it God, or like the universe, or higher consciousness, that's a different kind of love to human love, if you see what I mean. But again,
Right.
There's no mathematical equation for the divine, and how I might see the divine and you see it might be different as well. Have different interpretations.
And if there was an equation or if there was a math or a calculus for love, I'm sure Elon Musk would probably try to buy that company, right?
Yeah,
Let's hope not.
Everyone would be. I think everyone would do that if we found the formula for love.
Yeah, the formula, the calculus. Yeah, it's a great idea, though. So how does time and space fit into the grand picture of the metaphysical world? I've heard lots of different theories, and I've also heard that time might even be an illusion. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, my understanding is that time is an illusion. It's a human construct so that we can better understand the universe, because otherwise our minds are just blown. We can't wrap our head around something. So with what I look at, I believe that time doesn't exist. So past lives don't actually exist because it's all happening at the same time across different dimensions and across different timelines. But that's quite hard to wrap your head around sometimes.
Indeed.
But I see it when we heal in this lifetime or even in another lifetime. You see how it frees up different things, challenges that are happening in other lifetimes. So it kind of makes sense. It's like a ripple effect.
Could that be related to the butterfly effect?
Completely. But just not necessarily just on planet Earth, but throughout the whole of the universe.
And it's not the first time I've heard that. So if I understand you correctly, if we heal something in this lifetime, it's also possible to heal something in, let's say, another lifetime. The time element can be very confusing. You're right. It's a lot to get our heads around, but is that possible?
Oh, completely. That happens all the time. I tend to be a last resort for a lot of people, and they've tried everything in this dimension, this world, and it's not working. So I will look at their past lives, and not that past lives exist, but that's the term we've got for it. And something will have happened in their past life that is actually impacting them now in this current reality. So we heal that, and then it completely changes their current reality. Like they're able to let go or move on, or something just heals within them.
But it's a lot easier for us to imagine an axis going from A to B, like a horizontal axis, as if to say, well, you have an issue now because in a past life, you challenged someone to a duel and you lost. And that's why you've always felt a certain way about something. I remember reading about Edgar Cayce, one of his cases. He was doing a reading for a gentleman that apparently had a past life of Alexander Hamilton, who we know died in a gun duel. I think it's easier for us to think, okay, that goes back to 1812, and now here we are in 2022. Now that I've resolved that, I feel better about my life in the present.
Yeah, but it's also like phobias. It can be anything. Like I had an absolute terrified of cruise ships. Couldn't even look at them. They just terrified me. And when I explored it deeper for myself, I actually died in around Victorian times on a cruise ship. It sank in the Atlantic on its way to America. So I went down with the ship and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. So what I would do is go into that life and just heal it so that we can let it go. Because we carry so much stuff in our beings, karma or whatever you want to call it. So it's kind of healing that on an energetic level. It kind of frees you up and lightens you up. You're not as burdened.
Now, that particular lifetime, you were able to go back and you remember being on the cruise ship. Did you actually go as far as to when you actually died and when the ship went under?
Yeah, drowning. Drowning is quite common in past lives. And a lot of our past lives are not that not that nice. Like at all. I've experienced past lives on different planets in different galaxies and things like that. So in one of them, I was really not a nice person or being in this particular galaxy. And so my understanding right now is the reason I do the work I do in the world is I'm kind of making up for some really bad stuff that I did in other lifetimes. So my karma.
You must be doing a great job because you seem to be a very nice person. So I think you're not in arrears anymore. You're caught up. That's my guess anyway.
Yeah, we'll see. But
Okay. Yeah, only time will tell. That's true. Let's talk about the dimensions because we've talked before about how we're multidimensional beings. Do the dimensions correspond with the ones that are commonly discussed? Third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, and going up to whatever the end is. We hear a lot about 3D and 5D. Does the multidimensionality have to do with that discussion, or is it something completely different?
Well, I feel that there's infinite dimensions. So it's the same as I feel there's infinite chakras, the vortexes of energy, plugging us into the universe above us and plugging us into Earth below us. So I think pretty much most things in this universe are infinite. The dimensions are infinite. And the way I kind of try and rationalize this maybe is that in the different dimensions, there's different aspects of myself living. So that could be in a past life. It could be on another planet. It's all happening at the same time, but in a different dimension. One of my references of this is if we look at Jesus turning water into wine and bread, like feeding the thousands, I wonder what dimension he was living in to be able to do that. What dimension did he see to be able to manifest that? He must have had no limiting beliefs or
He was on another level completely, as are the other ascended masters, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what makes me feel that we're only scraping the surface of the different dimensions that are possible. But I do feel that planet Earth is going through a shift right now as a whole planet into another, I'm not sure whether I would call it a dimension. I call it a new way of being, the new paradigm, which I believe is here. And that's what we're kind of trying to navigate right now.
It seems like there's an awful lot of upheaval. Everybody knows what's in the news these days, and even on the world front with what's happening with the Ukraine and Russia. When you mention a shift, that reminds me of what some other speakers that have been on the show talk about, moving away from the masculine energy to the feminine energy. Or does that have anything to do with the divine feminine, or is that a different construct?
Yes. I believe it is. The old paradigm, which was called the Piscean Age, was very much focused on the masculine. It was set up for the masculine. The new paradigm, which is the age of Aquarius, is more about love and unity and equality. So I actually feel it's about the divine feminine having a seat at the table with the divine masculine and every other energies in between rather than one being higher than the other. Because the thing with the Piscean Age, the old paradigm, it was very hierarchical. So it was structures. And that's what we're seeing right now is these structures are just falling away because they're no longer working for this new way of coming in, this new way of being, which again is about love. It's about community. The old paradigm was about competition. What can I get? And the Aquarius Age is more about, we'll see advancements in technology. We'll see advancements in helping the greater good with technology as well. I believe, it's a prediction whether this comes true or not, because it depends on people's choices as we have free will, but people going back to growing their own vegetables, more sustainable living and more thought and care in the way we're living towards Mother Earth and planet Earth.
That which would be aligned with the concept of community and unity. What you mentioned before, everything was about competition. That's still firmly in place. You compete for a job. You compete for the girlfriend or the boyfriend. Or when I was a musician, there was such a competition for bands to get record deals that it basically just squeezed all the good, all the fun out of it. And I think a lot of us kind of missed the point. It wasn't about being better than someone else. It was about creating something that would hopefully last longer than we would. Art, as it were. You think that's eventually going to fall away and we are going to actually enter that age, what you call the Aquarian Age, right?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things I'd like to mention here. So first, I think it's already seeing it. So it depends what you follow. I'm not sure if I'm going to remember her name correctly, but she was the front woman for the Dresden Dolls, Amanda Palmer. So she was one of the first people to adopt the crowdfunding way of producing an album. And she made $1 million by offering different levels, how it is done now, crowdfunding. She was kind of a pioneer in that. And that was the first time that someone didn't have to go to a record company, went to their fans instead. So I'm seeing it change in different things. So I'm a bit of a Dungeons and Dragons player. And I also watch a show called Critical Role, which is voice actors play Dungeons and Dragons in LA and they live stream it. So they wanted to create a cartoon version, an animation of their show. They went to all the big names. No one was interested. So they crowdfunded it and they, again, blew records out the water. I think they got $12 million. So then all the big giants then came knocking. And so I feel like it is happening, but it's kind of an underground movement at the moment. And we're going to see more of it, I believe. Because again, the old structures and the old way of doing stuff where it's competition isn't going to work. And the other side of this is you're not in competition with someone else because what you bring to the table is different to what someone else brings to the table. And you're just going to click with someone and they're going to click with someone else. But as long as you're your authentic self, then you're always going to win, if I can use that word. There is no competition because you can't be in competition with that other person because you're uniquely you.
That's definitely a good way to look at it. I just really wish that the job marketplace in the corporate world, or whatever you want to call it, would be more of a community feeling where everyone brings their unique quality, their unique skill set, where there isn't such a competition. Because that, to me, it's like a minus-sum game. For every winner, there has to be a loser. And I think you're right. At some point in the future of mankind, for us to really progress, that's got to basically fall to the wayside. Let's talk about your work and what you do and some of your experiences with this metaphysical world that we're talking about today.
As I said in the previous episode, I was born with a lot of my gifts because I come from a long line of witches. But then I have dived into studying shamanism and different elements to kind of activate myself in different powers or healing modalities. Some of the things I've experienced have been quite out there. And I think one of the most intense one was I just finished a shamanic training program, and I really got to delve into the different worlds that were available. And I was with a client, and it was almost like this shadow entity. That's what I tend to call them. For me, they look like in the old cartoons where your shadow would do completely a different thing to what the cartoon character was doing. That's what they look like. And he was being particularly aggressive and silencing this client. It was kind of scary, I'm not going to lie, because I was kind of a bit new to all this. But I called in reinforcements, I called in my angels, called in extra people to help me remove him and take him to the light. Then it was after this experience that I just realized that we are all powerful. And nothing can really hurt us unless we choose to. We have choice. And it was that moment where I just was like, wow, like a recognition of how powerful I am. But so is everyone, because your word is law. Anything in those other realms, those other dimensions can't touch you, can't hurt you if you say no.
I think I told you about this before. When I went to a Reiki healer for the first time, I stood in a circle with the ladies. I think there's 4 or 5 of them. And the ringmaster, the leader, said what sounded like an incantation almost, or just a prayer. Only light and love can come in, and only light and love can leave. That's basically saying these are the boundaries. So everybody else, if you're not light and love, get lost, or don't bother because we're not going to let you in.
I do that all the time with my house. I say only beings of light are welcome here. All else must leave now. And then it's done. Like,
I like how you said that. Leave now. Or I'm going to have Lucy Brand come after you, and then you're really going to be in trouble. You think you're hurting now? Leave now while you can. Seriously, though, that's very good for all of us to know that we are powerful beings. And it reminds me of the Vampire Diaries, where apparently a vampire could not come into the house unless they're invited. It's the same concept, right? And you don't have to be religious, obviously.
No, not at all. I think it's really good for you to do it like if you've been struggling a bit. So if I've been ill, my defenses will have been low. So that's a time that a shadow entity might see a chink in my armor, so might decide to come and hang out in my house and make me feel a bit more miserable or whatever. So that's why I would definitely say something like that. Only beings of light are welcome here. All else must leave now. And say it in an authoritarian voice as well, especially if after you've not been feeling well, or maybe you've been feeling a bit down or whatever, just to cleanse your house, like cleanse where you are. You could even do it at work as well and see if like no one bothers you that you're not a fan of.
Right, exactly. No, that's good. That's good. Right. A protective bubble. Okay.
Yeah.
So I remember you were telling me about an instance with one of your clients. We didn't have time to go into this the last time, but apparently some of your clients are having their first incarnation on Earth, which could be challenging because if they've had lifetimes on other planets that were easier, this place it's rough. That's what I've been told anyway. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I just kind of can spot people that it's their first lifetime here because they tend to be quite confused at how the world works, why it is such a certain way, and why it's so hard, especially if they've been on other planets where they've manifested like that, or it's just been a lot more love and light and easier. From what I understand, it's a real honor and privilege to come to planet Earth. And the reason we come back is because we want to work off karma. And this is the quickest planet to do that on because it is so challenging. I think when we're on the other side, it's almost like a classroom situation where you're like, oh, I'm going to work off that karma or do that. And then when you're actually born here and you get here, you realize that it's just not that easy and that maybe taking on all that karma in this one lifetime was a bit much.
I've heard that you come here to learn, but it's not as hard at home because everything's love and light, and that's great. But do some people decide, well, I've been there before and I'm never going back? The last time I was there, President Trump was ruling the country, and I never, ever want to see it again. Is that possible?
Yeah, completely. It doesn't matter what universe you're in, what planet you're on, or even if you're on the other side with the divine, you have a choice. So you choose to come back. My understanding, again, of what I've channeled and asked my guides is that some people, when they have particularly traumatic lifetimes, or, how do I word this, particularly not very nice in their lifetime, they actually go to a healing place. Some people aren't allowed to reincarnate on planet Earth for, if we're going to put it in human terms, years and years and years, because they need to heal from what they've done, or they need to learn lessons from what they've done, because on the other side it is all love and light. So they'd never be reprimanded, but they'd be almost like shown a reel of what they did. And if that person has then become love and light because they've gone to the other side, they will be, I imagine, pretty disappointed in themselves. So, but I think, let me just check. So we always have a choice. Has anyone been said they can't come back? No.
Were you asking yourself, or were you asking one of your beings of light friends?
Yeah, I was just asking like a guide of mine, like a being of light. I was just checking in with them. Because I don't have all the answers, but I can get them for you.
Oh my, that could be a dangerous thing for some of us. I'm not sure I really want to know the answers to my questions, but that's probably a discussion for another day. Interesting concept, though. So since you've channeled certain beings of light and angels, do you have a visual picture of what the other side actually looks like?
Yes and no. Like, to me, it looks like many, many different rooms, depending on what you want to know, where you want to go, or what dimension you want to be in. I've said that the same souls circle each other to work off their karma. So if my grandma hasn't reincarnated, when I'm on the other side, I'll probably want to go out and hang out with her for a while and just be with her for a bit. And they're all in different, maybe rooms is wrong, different dimensions. It's like different planes that I see that happening. And there's some people that just, they don't want to come back. They don't want to work off their karma. And that's cool too. That's okay. Like, it really is. Any decision that you make is absolutely okay with the divine, because they're only love and light and forgiveness. So it doesn't matter what you do, really. You're always going to be forgiven for it.
Wow. Okay. Now, is it true then when someone goes home, apparently all of us go home, there is no hell, as you and others have told me before. When someone goes to that in-between space and they make their soul contracts and they come back, is it true that a portion of the soul stays home? Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works?
Yeah, that is true, because we're multidimensional beings living in different dimensions.
At the same time.
So there's a part of you that's always going to be home. There's like different parts of you scattered around the universe. Because if you think of your soul as multidimensional and just so expansive and infinite, and that's just, let's say, your soul, and my soul is that, I'm not sure, let me just check. No, I'm not sure it would be possible to contain it in one human. Because it's too awesome, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I just imagined for a moment, you and I can be in a different dimension watching us in this discussion, and I can hear you saying, well, Johnny, you're pretty good at this. I didn't even have to give you the script, and we're just having a joke about it.
Yeah, totally.
Again, I'm just making this up. I'm imagining that, but I've had another guest speaker that came on recently that pretty much gave me the same scenario, and I thought, okay, I can see that happening. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm not going to say it isn't happening. That would explain how we're multidimensional beings and we're able to be in different places at the same time. What about when you have a dream about people and places that, let's say it's in the present, it seems to be present day, and you've never met them in your physical life, but they are absolutely familiar. Is that an example about how part of us is in another dimension with these people, and that's why we're dreaming about them?
Yeah, that could be so many things. That could be you've had a past life with this person, or they're in another dimension and perhaps they are one of the souls that circle you, but right now they're in a different dimension. Or we go places in our sleep. Our consciousness, our higher self, our soul, if you want, it'll go places and sleep. So you'll go and meet people while you're sleeping.
It does seem like that, though, doesn't it? It really does.
Yeah.
And I've had several of these dreams, and I'm thinking, I've never met this girl, but I somehow feel like I know her or him or whatever. And this place, which I've never been to, but I know I've been here before, but this body's never really been there. The multidimensional explanation would kind of make that a little bit more plausible. At least that's what I think now.
Totally.
Okay.
When you do stuff that I do and jump timelines, it makes it hard to pinpoint when an event actually happened in your life. But I think it was maybe in 2021, and I was waking up so tired, so exhausted. When I checked in with myself, what is going on? Why am I so tired? My spirit was actually going to America and was helping people in America, just reassuring people in that spirit dimension. When my spirit was coming back in the morning, I was exhausted. And a lot of the time I felt quite down because it was quite serious, tough stuff that was going on in the States. So what I had to say, again, because I'm the authority in my life, I said, I'm happy for my spirit and soul to go off at night to heal while I sleep. But when you come back, I want you to close all portals and dimensions with love and light so that they're not going to bring any other energies back that are lower energies. And Lucy, the human, needs enough rest to be able to have a great day the next day and feel good about herself. The next day I jumped out of bed. I was like, oh, yes, my energy's back. It is so powerful.
It's great.
The awareness.
It's moments like these that I'm glad that I do transcripts. I know people are going to want to go, where is this written down? Well, if you go to closertovenus.com, everything from episode 38 and upward has a transcript. I think some people like to read anyway.
Yeah, I'm one of those people.
This is very good to know because it's not something that we really hear every day. The lives on the other planets, the decisions, I imagine this is planned in between incarnations. Do we make that decision or is it made for us?
Oh, yeah, we make all the decisions. It's totally our choice as to what you want to do and what planet you want to reincarnate on. And you even choose who your parents are, who your family members are. You choose who you're going to see, who you're going to meet. And then there is obviously stuff will happen because everyone has free will on this planet. So you might have a plan when you come here, but then someone else might do something that's not part of that plan. And then things might change. Anything can change in a split second. That's why predicting the future doesn't always work because it depends on other people and the decisions they've made.
A lot of moving parts there. So is it possible that when my time comes and I decide where and when I want to reincarnate, can I say, well, I'm going to go to planet Zoltar, but I want to make sure Prince, Michael Jackson, and David Bowie are my best friends from like age 5. Can we do that? That's probably a lot to ask for.
I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can. I don't think it's a lot to ask for. Like literally, I think there are no limits. And Source will just be have what you want.
I forgot John Lennon and George Harrison as well. And I'll even play bass if I have to. And I don't offer that very often. It's good to know. I think it's eye-opening for a lot of us. It makes the possibility of alien life and worlds and different planets a lot more believable because a lot of people are talking about being reincarnated on different planets. From what I've heard from some of the mediums, they talk about how these beings don't like being called aliens because alien means apart. And they apparently do not feel like they are apart from us, that we're part of the same star family. You agree?
Yeah, I believe we all come from the same one. We're all like part of the same thing, but just in a different form, a different aspect. I really just wanted to share something that's coming through right now. Someone needs to hear this that's listening to the podcast. When you make a decision or when you take an action, I would always preface that with for the highest good of all involved. Because then it offers it up to Source, basically. So whatever decisions someone else might make, for you, it will be kind of like a protection bubble again, that the highest good for all involved will come out.
Is that the same thing as saying, I wish for a most beneficial outcome for my work life?
Yeah.
my family, or most beneficial outcome for my podcast to reach the people that it has to reach. And by the way, this isn't live, so the only person that's really listening other than you is me. So could it be that that message was for me, or am I just dreaming?
No, it could be, but I think it's for a listener somewhere. They'll just tell me someone that listens to the podcast.
Which means someone other than you and I that's listening right now?
No, will be in the future.
Okay. All
yeah.
right.
Because time doesn't exist.
Oh, sorry. I stand corrected. It's true. You make the rules, not me. That's interesting, though. There is no time. What happens before we are incarnated here on Earth?
It depends what you want to do. Some people have to go into deep states of healing because of what they've experienced on planet Earth in their lifetime. Other people, they would want to do more research because if you think about it, every time you come back, you're going to play a different character, if you like. You could be a different gender, working off different karma, different things. So I imagine that when you've had a life here, you might be like feeling quite inspired about how you want to next reincarnate, or what thing you want to bring forth or stand for, or how you want to change. Because I believe that every baby that's born is of love and light. It's only their experiences through life which then make them what they are. I was checking in earlier about perhaps there's chemical imbalances in the mind, which then results in things. But apart from that, I feel a lot of people come here with a purpose of some kind to heal or move or help the planet. But some of us just get lost or caught up, and that's okay too. There's never going to be any reprimand for it. But I think then when you go on to the other side, you'll be like, oh, I wish I could have done that differently. So maybe I'm going to go and research how someone else did it. Like, because you have access to all this records of life and time, or you might be like, do you know what? I need to take the next millennia off. I'm exhausted from that life. So I'm just going to chill, hang out in this love and light. If they showed me everything on the other side, my brains would probably explode. I wouldn't be able to handle it. So this is just my limited understanding as a human.
Well, we were just talking about the access to just about anything you want, anything you need. Is it true that manifestation when you're on the other side is instant? And I've heard this from people who've had near-death experiences where they think of something and they're there. They think of something or someone and they're there. In your channeling experience and related experiences, do you find that to be true?
Oh, yeah, completely. So on the other side, there's no resistance because there's love and light. On planet Earth, this is a very dense planet. It's a very heavy planet. And there's a lot of resistance. As humans, our emotions can get in the way, our beliefs can get in the way of us manifesting what we want. For example, we don't feel worthy of it or whatever. So then we're on a different frequency because our desires are hanging out in joy and bliss normally. And if we're feeling unworthy, we're on a completely different frequency. And then there's loads of resistance between you and your desire. Whereas on the other side, because you're love and light, it like manifests like that because there's no resistance, there's no unworthiness or not good enough.
That's something to look forward to for a lot of us. What is light language and how is it different from the other healing modalities?
So light language, how it manifests in me is sounds, so I speak it. And the way I can share it with you is I channel galactic beings of the light. So when I heal people with my light language, it's the highest frequency that I've ever channeled. So in shamanic healing, it tends to be earth-based frequencies, which are a bit denser, whereas the angelic frequencies, the light language frequencies, are much higher. Light, they transform things like that just so fast. Then you can channel different things for different things to be healed, depending on what beings want to come forward.
So light language, is that the same thing as an angelic frequency?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Excellent.
It's different for different people, like different people channel. I get very giggly with mine because it's quite high frequency.
It's possible that we might have to devote another episode to the light language because it's not something we hear about every day. Is there any other messages that are coming forward right at the moment?
No, I haven't really got any other messages apart from just keep going, and just know that it's all going to work out okay and that you're doing a great job. That's for everyone that's listening, and including you, Johnny, too. It is just having that hug, that reassurance. That's how I see this podcast. It's almost like a reassurance. Like, it's okay. It's okay.
Well, that is reassuring, I think. Great stuff. So, Lucy, thanks again for being with us, coming back. That will conclude the Metaphysical World Part 2, but who knows? We might have another episode of Light Language down the pike. How can our listeners find more about you online?
On my website, www.lucy-brand.com.
Okay.
And you can also find me on Instagram at Energetic Essence Healing.
Excellent. I will put that in the show notes and the transcript as well. You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. You can also leave us a review on iTunes as well. For more info, go to closertovenus.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.